Good evening, welcome to September's Power BI Manchester. My name is Alex Taylor, I work for Rob Walters. Welcome to our offices. This is... Sorry. So I work for Rob Walters. I've been in the Power BI group for almost 6 years now. Tonight we've got two fantastic speakers. We've got Pedro, who's dialing in from Porto, and James, who's coming from London. The Avanade group also runs the Power BI London user group with Pratik Kamasani and a few other people, which just had their 6th anniversary birthday. They had a few special guests, didn't they? Was it Will Thompson? Who else did you have?
I wasn't there. So.
Will Thompson from Microsoft and a few of the guys dialed in.
Chris Webb.
Oh yeah, Chris Webb. So tonight, a bit like me, I'm a BI data recruiter. So if you're looking for work or looking to hire someone, just give me a shout. You've got my details. Yes, so tonight, obviously, we're a little bit behind, which is fine because I haven't ordered Domino's, which I will do shortly. But Pedro is going to be speaking on Power BI metrics, which is it's recently changed to Power BI metrics. And then in about 50 minutes afterwards, James will be doing his maps in Power BI talk. And then I'll have a chance to network and have pizzas and refreshments around about 10 to 8 o'clock. And then we'll wrap up about 8:30, 8:45. Pedro, are you online?
Yes, I'm here. Hi, guys.
Thank you. Good evening to the user group. We've got about 45 people, 50 people in the room tonight, and about 20 or so online.
All right.
So I was just going to do a quick intro for yourself. So obviously you've worked in various different organisations over the last 15 years, specialising in Power BI, SSRS, and other BI tools. You are the co-founder for the Power BI Portugal Meetup and also the Porto Power BI group. And obviously you've spoken at Power Platform, SQL Saturday, Porto Data, and other meetups. So I'll quickly intro James as well, and then the floor is yours to do your talk on Power BI metrics.
Right.
As I said, James runs the Power BI London user group. He is the global lead for Avanade, which is a large Microsoft specialist consultancy. Correct me if that's wrong. And he's also a Microsoft Data Platform MVP. He's spoken at Power BI user group previously on maps, but I'd say it's probably around about 3-4 years ago. So this is good to have him back. It has changed a lot, but yeah. Just quickly, so next month's Power BI user group is actually in 3 weeks, not 4 weeks. I'm aware that people have got kids, we've got half term, got Halloween, so I've made it 3 weeks time. Back here, it was going to be at Cinch's office, but Cinch have actually found new premises, so unfortunately we can't use them just yet. We'll be going to Cinch next year instead. We've got Lewis Holmes, who is one of the co-orgs of these groups, speaking alongside James Andrew. Details on the meetup, so you can RSVP. But again, it'll be this offices with a 6 o'clock start, hopefully without some tech issues like we've had tonight. So without further ado, Pedro, the floor is all yours.
All right, then. Thanks for the intro. Hi, guys. I hope you are excited to speak a little bit about Power BI metrics. So let me share my screen for you guys to confirm if everything is okay. All good? Okay. So just to mention on top of the thanks for the initial introduction, just to tell you guys that also I'm really excited to be here at the Manchester Power BI user group, because I'm also the co-founder and leader of the Power BI Portugal user group. We have about 3,600 members, and I think only Manchester user group is right now larger in Europe. So it's fantastic really to be here at the group, which is really huge, and I follow also a lot of the posts of the group. So I also would like to take the chance to get to know a little bit about you guys. So I want to ask 1 or 2 questions about you guys to get a feel of the audience. So the first one, and if you say yes, you can raise your hand. If not, you can keep your hand down. And also maybe one of the maybe Ben or Alex, one of you guys can help me to get a grasp to understand the total number of guys that are saying yes or no. All right. Okay. So the first question I'll pose is, who has used already Power BI metrics? Raise your hands.
Nine people, about 45.
9 people. Okay, so let's say less than 25%. Then the second question, who has come to Portugal?
Who's been to Portugal? Oh, I'd say 20 or so. I'd say over half probably actually now.
Over half. Okay, so you guys like Algarve and maybe the north. So good to know.
Online, yeah, it's online.
Yeah. Okay.
We've got a few on hands of it online as well.
Online, you guys can raise a hand. Thanks. Who is a Manchester City fan?
We've got three. We've got four. We've got 4 out of 45 there.
4 or 5. Okay.
Less than 10%. I'm not sure about
less
online.
than 10%. Let's see who is a Manchester United fan.
Oh, similar number. There's about 5 people in the office.
5 people in the office. Okay. And who thinks it's coming home in 2022 if Harry Maguire benches?
Most people.
Most people. Okay, that makes sense. Let's see what happens. I hope you guys all. I like a lot of football besides Power BI, so it's another passion. I'm really looking forward next month. I have my screen set up to be able to work a bit on Power BI and watch some World Cup football. So I hope you guys are excited about that. So today's session objectives. First, I want to tell you guys, as we've seen, less than 25% used Power BI scorecards metrics. So why does it matter? What is the importance? Then what are the steps to set up your first scorecard? Then we'll deep dive a little bit more on the technical side on considerations for doing scorecards and some of the technical components that are necessary to think about. I'll give you a brief implementation strategy because Power BI scorecards is a top management feature, and I want to give you a little bit on the highlight on that, and we'll do a recap according to the time. So ready for it? Let's go. So first of all, why scorecards? This is because most of you guys are Power BI guys, and you know the report and the dashboard. These are there is a lot of confusion actually in the users. Maybe you guys already experienced that. I see a lot of people calling a dashboard something that is actually a report, and the other thing sometimes less common, but also happens. So. And now we have the third element in the confusion, which is a scorecard. And it's important to clarify the differences between the three of them. So an image of a report, an image of a dashboard, and an image of a scorecard. And what can you guys see in the difference between them? Well, it's actually that in the report definition, a report is a little bit, it's a document that presents information in an organized format for a specific audience and purpose. That's why a report can actually have visuals or it might not have. You've seen for sure some reports which do not have a lot of visuals. So this is the definition of a report. A dashboard is a visual display of all your data. While it can be used in lots of different ways, the primary intention is to provide information at a glance, such as the main KPIs. So a report may have multiple pages. A dashboard is usually just a single page, information at a glance. And what's the difference for a scorecard? It provides a relevant range of financial and non-financial information that supports effective business management. You can do it on top of a dashboard, but a scorecard is more precise because it has some predefined areas that are important for the scope of the analytics on top of the corporation. So we'll take a look on these and specifically on the scorecard. So balanced scorecard. I mentioned what it is scorecard, but the concept of a balanced scorecard, it comes around the end 90s. And this is because when assessing a company, it's important, not only it's easy to analyze the financials. I'm sure I've seen meetups from you guys before talking about finance analytics in Power BI, etc. And it's easy to stay with the financials, but there are other areas that are important to really analyze the health and the potential for growth of a corporation. So the balanced scorecard grew because of this need, and it uses a couple of areas, not only the financial focus, but also the customer focus. If you are growing the user base, if you have potential to grow the user base, how much do you pay for customer acquisition costs, these kind of KPIs. Then it also has KPIs on the learning focus. How is your organization evolving in terms of their learning, in terms of, let's say, their data engineering skills, their technological skills, and on the terms of the processes, how fast do you do the processes, your delivery, the lead time on your SLA, these kind of KPIs, is also important. So a balanced scorecard contains a little bit of a mix of all of this according to the industry. And so let's take a look at setting up your first scorecard. So in terms of Power BI, what you need to know is that initially when this was released, it was a Power BI premium feature. But a little bit short after, people noticed that it was actually working in Pro, and then the documentation was announced, it was updated, and you just need a Power BI Pro license. So you can set it up on a Power BI Pro workspace without premium or premium per user. So then you also can set it up on a Power BI Premium per capacity and then share it with free users. So it's exactly the same principle as the sharing reports or dashboards. This is exactly the same principles. The scorecard components. This is the old look of the scorecard components, and you can see that you have you set up the KPIs on your scorecard. You set up the values, the targets, and then who is the owner, and the due date, and you can update also the status. So these are the key components for the scorecard. We're going to set up all of this. This is the new look because, well, the challenge of presenting a session about the metrics is that initially the session was goals, then it changes to metrics, then all the menus and all the UX UI changed, and it's changing every month. There are a few new things, so it's changing rapidly. So every month I do a session on this topic, I have to review to make sure that it's up to date. So this is the new look and feel of the Power BI metrics. Some things that changed is the statuses overview is now on the top, and the interface to create a new metric is on the top right, and a couple of things changed in the interface. We'll take a look in a second. So without said, let's go to the demo, which is, I'm sure, the thing you guys find more fun. So I'm here in a Power BI service. I'm going to use a sample report I've created with dummy data for the demo purposes. This report has some industry KPIs on sales, like revenue. I can see the revenue in the target, how many customers I have, and market share. And then I have some trend charts that I'm going to analyze. So this report is published to the Power BI service, and I have it here on my Power BI service. I can create, as I could a new report or dashboard, I can create a scorecard. And when I create it, I can say my revenue, I can create a couple KPIs, and so on. So this is the interface. I can click here for a new metric, click on the revenue and create a new submetric, and keep adding all the features that I've shared, like the values, the targets, etc. I'm not going to do ones from scratch, so I'm going to switch to another workspace where I'll have already prepared one for the demo purposes. So I have here a balanced scorecard. This balanced scorecard, I'll open it up, and it's like the name says, a balanced scorecard. So we'll have some information on the customer, on the learning and growth, and on the bottom, on the internal processes. For instance, you can see here as a Power BI guy, some Power BI. Now it's PL300 certifications, MVP members, solution experts. I want to grow, the knowledge in my team. So this is the learning and growth. Internal business processes, I have some KPIs like the ticket resolution time. On the customer side, I have like the number of customers, new customers on board, customer churn, which is deprecation of customers, losing customers over time, not coming back and not returning. And the financial part of the KPIs is completely empty. So when I am on this menu, I can click on the edit. And now I can, within the financial, I can either create a new metric, or I can click on the financial and create that I'm going to add a submetric. So this financial will act a little bit like a bucket. So I'm going to add a submetric, and I'm going to call it the revenue year to date, YTD. I can set up the start dates for this KPI. So I'll just do it in the first one, not to lose time and to be efficient. So I'll make it that this is a yearly goal, and I'm going to save it. Okay, so I created a sub KPI. I can create a new metric. For instance, I can create the profit year to date. And now I can also drag and drop this profit. I'm going to drag and drop it and place it here. So you see, I can just nest it higher or lower in the hierarchy. So I'm going to place it here at the same level as the revenue year to date. So I can create a submetric, or then I have in the interface, I can move things around. I'm going to create a final one here, which is going to be a submetric. I'm going to call it the market share. And so now I have my three KPIs, and I want to start to populate some values. So I'm going to go back in the read mode. So a developer has configured this. And now the end users can actually come here. When I share this scorecard, they can, as well as I could share reports, they can come here and state some KPIs. For instance, I have this menu and I can say a new check-in. Let's say that in the end of quarter 1, like in 31st of March, my value was 0.125, which is 12.5%. I can save it. I add another one. So let's do just a couple ones to be quick. So I'll 30th of June, and I'll make it maybe 124. And I'll include a note. We lose this customer. Okay. And then I can add another one. Let's say that it's now, and now I'm at 131. So you can see in the chart automatically to follow my KPI is dynamically updated. Okay, so this is very cool. Another thing that I can do, so I'm just updating values manually, and I can see the history changes in my interface. So I can see it automatically calculates the change between the previous value, and I can also see who is the owner. And then I'll be able to track a cycle to track the KPI versus a target. You will see it in a second. I'm going into edit mode in my KPI and in my market share. Now what I'm going to do is I want to, let's edit here, and I want to create a target. So if my target would be 0.13, 13%, let's edit here and see what is the look of this. Now I can activate to show the target, but this is a static target. So you can see right now, my objective is just an overall year target. So I have, if I want to refine this, I have further options to do, which is in my final target. Now I can edit this. Previously, it was not possible. And I can say that my target was 1 to 5, let's say in a specific date, for instance, in March. And then in another date, let's say that in June, my target was 0, 1, 2, 3, let's 1 to 5, 1 to 3, and 0, 1, 3, 5, let's say that this is going to be my target in September. So it's just like add data. It creates a table automatically for you in Power BI, like add data. And then let's take a look at what happened with this. So now you can see the incremental variations in your target. So you can do this as detailed as you want manually. This is manually still. And then you are able to see the progression of your KPI according to your target, which is quite nice. I have another KPI here, revenue year to date. And on the revenue year to date, let's edit this and place a value like my final target. If I remember, let me take a look at my report. If I select 2022, I can see that my target is 72 million and my year to date is 86. So let's say that my final target is 72 million and that my current value, let's say that it would be, for instance, 65 million. So just for the demo purposes, what I want to edit now is I can see in the detail, I have the history like I had before, and I have statuses rules. What I can create is a new rule that says if my value is over 100% of my target, say that it's on track. Otherwise, I can do conditional rules. I can add 2 conditions for this rule. This is not what I want. Sorry. On track. A new rule. If the value is over 95%, then I can say that my KPI is at risk, and otherwise I'm behind. So let's see what is the impact on what I've just done. So right now the KPI is behind because I'm clearly at 65 million versus 72 million target. If I would edit this and change the value or do a check-in, let's say to 71 million, now it says that I'm at risk. Okay, so it's working and it's updating. So we've seen a couple of things. We see the details, the history, the status rules, and now we have also the time period. Let me explain what this means. I have here this KPI, number of customers. And on this number of customers, let me edit. I have, I think, some targets. Yeah, I have some values here, manually inputted. And only have a target that is a final end of year target. So let's place like 290 by the end of the year. And now what I want to do on this KPI is I'm going to click here and say that I want to track this quarterly. So if it's already done. So if you see here, I'm at 3.52% over quarter on quarter. And I see this trend line here to 56 in the 401. And then on 701, I'm 265. And I see my variation. What I can do here is I can click the number of customers, and in the time period, I can change that I want to track this on a monthly basis. And if I apply this, and I want to start tracking like this, so you see a small variation here, a small curve, because now my KPI is updated on a monthly basis. So I can see this slight decrease here in May because I'm not tracking quarterly, I'm tracking monthly. You can do this daily, weekly. So on the time period, you just frame to present the variations and to present the charts on which is the time frame that you are analyzing. This is extremely useful because some KPIs are quarterly, some KPIs are monthly, some are daily or weekly, more operational KPIs. So this allows you to quickly track in a different way operational, tactical, or strategic KPIs in the way that you monitor them. So we'll check these features, but so far we've only done this manually. Now we are Power BI guys, we are IT, and we want to automate this for the end user. As soon as a KPI has a report which can support the value of the KPI, what I can do is I can edit it and I can connect the value of my KPI directly to a report. So I can click here the connect to data. It's going to fetch all the reports that I have access. So the user who builds this must have access to the intrinsic report which should support the metric. And I'll click here on the scorecard demo report. So I will click here and I can pick any element. So you see I can click the revenue year to date and it says, okay, the current value is 86 million. And the filters are 2021 or 2022. If this is not what I wanted, I can just filter the 2022 year. This will not produce an effect because it's a year to date, so it only contains the calculation for the current year. But if it wasn't the case, then you can see that I just changed the filter context, and this will be passed in the query that will be sent to get the data for my scorecard. So data is 2022, 86 million, and I can connect and get this data. Let's do exact same thing for the target. Then I'll get from the same report. And I have here my revenue year to date, target. I can connect and save. And now this is connected to the report. Every time the report is refreshed, my data will be up to date, which is quite nice. And now I can see I'm at 86 million versus 72 target. It's going really well in our company. So that's nice, but this is a KPI which the evolution, we are tracking just one single value and not the different values according to the time frame evolution. So what I want to show you guys is I have another page here in the report. Actually, I'll pop up this in a second. So in my market share, I want to add this and I want to connect to data. So let's go to the same report. And I think I have a page here. Yeah, so I have a nice interface here where I can click. You see here revenue, and I click on a bookmark and it changes the actual visual, the fields that are in the visual. So I see now the evolution of my market share and my market share target. And now I can click here in the report. But it's just capturing the latest value of my target, which is not exactly what I want. So what I can do, as long as I have a date field in my report, if I drill down to the actual date and I click now in the data point and the latest data point, you will see now that I have another option, which is to track just the data point that, as I could before, but also the nice option is to track all the data in the time series. So my chart will get all the data points. This is exactly what I want. So I'll connect to this data point. And the targets, I also have targets that I have daily targets or monthly targets. So I'll also get them from the report. And let me go to the second page. Market share, I expand this to the daily values, click here, and I want to track the average market share target and track all the data series. So let's automate this, save it, and let's see the effect in our report. And now if I click on this, I can see, let me see, history. I think something failed. Let me check. Market share. Let me just try again. All the data. Okay. I think I know where it failed. So let me go to the second page. Average market share. Expand this. And I want to capture all the values until the end. Okay. Okay, so I have my values now, and I can filter and see the evolution. Well, the data doesn't make much sense. This is just a linear dummy data, but then you can see that now I can get the evolution of the values day by day, and then I can also see the target and how I compare to my target, which is really quite nice. And I have a data connection, which if I want at any time, I can force a refresh, or I can just disconnect from the data. I don't need to refresh it because this is connected directly to the report, and we'll see in a second what is the connection to the report. Another thing I want to share with you guys is if you see in the report this kind of interface. So you see here, I have a bookmark, and this is quite nice, but this can generate some problem for the report, meaning that, as you've seen, in order to get a KPI, you need to be able to click on the item that you want. So if the item that you want is not possible to click, let's say that I wanted to click on the market share. And as I have a button with a bookmark here on the top, I am not actually able, unless I have a small corner where I can click, to actually click in the KPI that you see here that is behind. So there are some considerations for the report builders if you want users then to connect to the data, means that the KPI must be clickable for the end user, or there are other ways that we can also leverage and make this possible. I'll give you an example. I want to connect now this my profits. So I'll connect to data. And let's say that we don't have a page where we have the evolution of the profit. I just have a revenue. Well, you have a very nice option if you want, which is if you want to enable visual personalization. Visual personalization that you have here. If you want to enable this, this means that, let me go back to the presentation. You might remember that in the report options, in the report settings, you can allow users to personalize their visuals, or you can just select the visuals which are available for the users to personalize. So what can we do with this? If this visual has the option to personalize, I can click on it. That's here. And in my card, let's say on this one, I can say that it's not my revenue year to date, it's my profit year to date. Okay. So now I can actually get the value for my profit year to date and connect it to my scorecard. I can do the same thing for my target and my profit. I can use this visual personalization to get a KPI that is in the model, but it's not directly accessible in the report. So let's personalize this one here. Now I want not this, but I want my profit year to date target in my personalization. I click here and I can connect to the actual value. And I can save it. And now my report is fully automated, these 3 KPIs that I've just built. and you can see here the values. I can assign who is the owner. Let me move this one to the correct section because this is market share. This is in the customer section. So far so good. I do a quick pause. Is there any question on the things you guys seen so far? Let's give it a minute. And meanwhile, I prepare the next demo. Okay, so let's move on. In the end, if there is any question, I'll ask again. So if you had any questions so far, please feel free to ask in the end. In the meanwhile, doing a quick recap of what you guys have seen. So scorecard building considerations. It's important to think about the types of charts that you have available. Report tile placement, as I've just demonstrated. If you cannot click in the tile, you cannot bring it to the report unless you activate the visual personalization, okay? Other thing is the date column availability, meaning that if you don't have a date column, as you've seen in the time in the chart with evolution on time, you will not be able to get all the data points to automatically populate all the data points of your scorecard. Other consideration is that it's easy to track a KPI, which the increase is good, then the decrease is good. So let's say you have a compliance KPI. You want to keep over 98% of a compliance with a KPI. Instead of saying that the percentage of non-compliance is 2% and then going from 2% to 1.5% is actually positive, it's more difficult to track that is positive in the scorecard. So I'd recommend to instead track the compliance percentage and say that going from 98% to 98.5% is positive, and that will produce the desired effect on your scorecard. On the types of charts too, right now most of the charts correctly work with the scorecards. Let me show you, for instance, if you wanted to connect, let me get one which is empty. Just for the demo purposes, if I want to connect this to another page in the report. So I have other visuals here. And you can see that I have a table and a matrix. If you click here on this cell, it automatically captures the filters that are within this cell. So you can pass these filters on your scorecard. If you wanted every revenue year to date, but you don't want just a specific month, of course, you shouldn't click here, but you can click here in the bottom and then you capture the entire value of revenue year to date. So it depends on the position. The filter context from the visual will be passed to your scorecard. You can see here also I have a table with KPIs. If I click revenue year to date target, the year 2022 is passed and the KPI is passed to the same way. If I click here, the measure and the filter is passed through the scorecard. So this is a point. Another page, for instance, if you click in a specific value, I have here the evolution of new customers and customers that we lost. If I click on a specific point, you can see that I have my current customers right now, the value, or I could click here and I get the number of new customers which were acquired in this data point, or I could just expand this more and then click in a different data point and track all the data in the time series as we've seen before. So we have all this flexibility and it's working pretty well in most of the most common visuals already. There are other functionalities in Power BI scorecards. For instance, you have a couple of personalizations like customizing the columns that you see in the scorecard and role settings. Let's take a look. These two are very quick to see. So let me go to Power BI service. And as you can see here, under name, column settings, if I don't want to see the progress, I can just apply it and boom, it disappears. Let's place it back. Other option that I have is if you have a scorecard like this, I can create, I could create a scorecard just for financials and another scorecard for the customer. But if you want to have a single one and not two, for instance, you have the CEO, which has access to everything, and then you have the finance leader and the marketing leader that have access to the same scorecard, but with different security, it's possible to create the roles. So in the settings of the scorecard, in the permissions, you can create roles, the same way as like a little bit like role level security. And I can say that if I create like a marketing role, I can select that the marketing role will be able to see everything in the customer section. I can click here, set for all, save it, and then I can assign this marketing role. And the user which has this marketing role can just see 5 metrics. So it's pretty easy to use and also very useful. It gives you some flexibility. There is also a visual on Power BI desktop. So if I pick my report again, now it's on GA, on general availability, and you have it here. I can click in my scorecard visual, and I can get any scorecard that I exist or create a new one from Power BI desktop. I have my recent one. And now I have connected to my scorecard and I can create a report. What is the advantage of this? You can create more than one scorecard in the same page, which maybe I think it's not a big advantage. I think actually there are not a lot of advantages on using this, and I don't know anyone who's actively using this. Just to tell you that you have a little bit more of flexibility, let's say, in terms of if you want to remove like the header, column headers or something like that, or change like something in the color of the interface or the KPIs. You have this option, a little bit more personalization if you want for colorblind people or more inclusive visuals. You have these options to do this. This feature fully works also. It's fully supported on mobile, so you can just open it as you would open a report or a dashboard pretty well. And other thing is the Power Automate integration. So meaning that when a KPI is updated, you can see that I'm receiving notifications. You see my revenue year to date is now on track. So I'm receiving these notifications on Teams because it's just integrated. And if even you can disable these automatic notifications, it will send you, if you are the one that is assigned as the owner of the KPI, you can receive these notifications automatically or not. Or you can just go on Power BI service and you can click here in the create a flow. A menu will pop up where you have some predefined connectors linked to scorecards. For instance, make an action when a goal changes, make an action when someone edits or a goals to alert that this was changed, or let's say when the current value of a goal changes. I can do any of this. I have prepared one here. I can connect to my workspace and to my scorecard, and then I can pick any of the goals that I have, like the customers, the number of customers I have. And when this, I can define also a pooling interval. This is predefined 400, meaning that it's about every 4 hours it will check, it will run the API call and check if the value has changed, and then it will push the trigger if it has changed. And for instance, I can send an email to someone and say that there is an input required and place some choices or just some body with some dynamic content, dynamic parameters to send a notification. So it's just very powerful too. The same way you can do it with report data, SharePoint data, you can do it also with Power BI, with Power BI scorecards. So implementation strategy. Now you know a lot about scorecards. And how can you implement this in your organization? First of all, step one, my recommendation is to create the vision. Meaning this, as I mentioned, this is a top management feature. Scorecards are a high-level overview of strategic KPIs. So you can define with management, creating the vision, meaning that even if you don't have all the reports you need to sustain this, you can just create a vision. Okay, what are the KPIs that we're going strategically to monitor in the organization? So you can create with management the KPIs, and then you can either feed them manually. For instance, you don't have reports, no problem. feed them manually for a time. Keep someone doing this. Eventually, they will get bored and they will want to automate the process or create a report which can sustain this process. So after assigning an owner to each goal, the values can be updated on a periodical basis manually, as you see in here. Step 3, automation from each owner. So each of the guys that are the owner of the financials, of the marketing, of the customer growth, of the process growth, they can launch the initiatives to create a report which sustains the KPIs and the scorecards. So each of them will launch the initiatives or sponsor the initiatives, and then we'll be able to connect the reports directly to the scorecard. Step 4 is ownership. So each leader that has KPIs assigned also has a very nice feature and a landing page in its own goals. So let me go back to Power BI because I think this one is interesting to show you. If I go back to my scorecard and I can click here, let's follow the revenue and let's follow the profit. I can click on this small button and I have here in the panel the metrics tab, and I can click on the metrics. I can see some recommended goals for me. I can see also my scorecards, and I can click on the ones that I'm following. And you see here, the 2 KPIs that I defined to follow are automatically visible for me here, or I can see just all that are assigned for me, and I have a lot of test metrics here. So this is also very useful and I think very powerful. So upcoming and a recap, because I mentioned that this is changing like at least every couple months, this is changing. Upcoming will be more drilled down in terms of the metrics so that you will have a different level of detail according to some segments, some categories. So we will be able to see something like this. It's not yet possible, but I believe I don't want to say anything wrong under NDA. So this will come soon enough, these new features. So this should be very useful and bring even enhanced functionality to Power BI metrics. Also, something that is going to come is the way that you can define how this is done, either if it's a sum of a submetrics, so that as you've seen, I created the cluster of financial KPIs. I can say that if my entire group of financial KPIs is on track or not, according either to the sum or the average of my submetrics, or I can use their sub-results of my submetrics to say if I'm on track or not on the category, which is something that could be very nice. So, recap of our session. We talked about why Power BI scorecards matter, the difference between a report, a dashboard, and a scorecard, and we've seen how to create your first scorecard. Creating a scorecard, we've seen how to create them, what is the manual mode, and how you can do the updates or the check-ins, and then how to connect, then automate this to existing reports and get all the data points or just a single point of value. We've also seen the advanced considerations for building a scorecard, like the permissions. I didn't talk about that, but you need report build permissions in order to create the scorecard, and you need access to all the reports which sustain the scorecard, of course. Refresh data set. I didn't talk about this one, so I want to tell you very briefly about this one, which is if I go to my workspace, you see that behind my scorecard, there is actually a data set, balanced scorecard data set. And so I can actually see the data behind this, or I could actually create a report from this. So let me just go back to show you something. So in my settings of my balanced scorecard, you can see that I can schedule the refresh of the data behind my scorecards. I don't need data source credentials on this one here in the gateway connection because all the data is already in the cloud that supports all the reports are already have the data set and their data sources with the right connection. So I don't need to establish here again. And I can set up the schedule refresh for this. In my data set, I can actually build and create a new report. I can auto create a report, or I can start from scratch. And you can see here that in my goals, I think it's my name of my goal and my value, something like this. you could actually create a new report from scratch here on Power BI service with this, just to track the evolution of your KPIs and deploy it in a single way, because now this is a Power BI report connected to the data set of your scorecard. So we talked about the advanced considerations for this and the implementation strategy, meaning that it's important to have awareness of your top management, to make also the top-down vision, to start with the vision, what are the KPIs, independently and regardless of if you have the data already to sustain it, automated or not, giving the ownership, start manually, we don't have it, and then converge to an automatically applied with your strategy. Resources to study more, not a lot. There are a couple of 2 or 3 speakers more that have also sessions on this, but there is not a lot. You have the Power BI metrics documentation, and that's pretty much about it right now on this topic. So it's time for Q&A. You guys have my contacts here. If you guys any time are in Portugal, you want to talk about football, you want to talk about Power BI, want to have a beer, and you are in the northern part of Portugal, feel free to reach me, send me a message on LinkedIn or by email, and let's network and hang out. And then for sure, if I go to Manchester soon, I'll definitely try to visit the user group and go to a session as an attendee for sure. So do you guys have any questions on the session so far?